The key wasn't shiny anymore, its teeth worn down, the plastic top faded to a cloudy gray. I hadn't used it in months. It sat in the junk drawer next to expired coupons, spare batteries, and a warped deck of cards. Still, when I held it that morning, it had weight, not just the metal, the memory. It was Thanksgiving morning. The house smelled like scorched toast because I forgot to set the timer. I had a Costco pumpkin pie in one hand and my phone in the other, scanning for any excuse not to go. But Mom had already sent the third "can't wait to see you" text, complete with too many emojis. So I put on the itchy sweater she gave me last year, pocketed the key, and headed out. My name's Evan, 34, single, part-time IT contractor, full-time disappointment if you ask my brother. Thanksgiving used to mean something different when we were kids, me and Mason fighting over the drumsticks, watching football on a loop while Dad snored in the recliner. But those days were packed away along with the VHS tapes and our old Nintendo. These days, holidays were a performance, especially now that Mason had become Dr. Mason R. Carter, DDS, married, mortgage, leased a Tesla, and I was, well, me. I pulled up to my parents' driveway in my '9 Civic, duct tape on the side mirror, the glove compartment permanently jammed, a click from the engine I couldn't afford to fix. The only reason I still had it was because no one would buy it. When I stepped out, Mason's Tesla was already there, gleaming under the cloudy November sky like it had just been waxed by angels. I parked 2 spaces behind it and made sure not to scratch anything walking past. Inside, Mom greeted me like I'd returned from war. "There's my sweet boy," I was just saying. "Evan probably got held up fixing something for someone. He's always helping people." That wasn't true, but I let her say it. Mason was at the kitchen island, sipping wine with his pinky practically in the air. His wife, Clara, perched beside him in a beige turtleneck that screamed influencer. They both looked like they'd stepped out of a Thanksgiving-themed J.Crew ad. "Hey," I said, offering a nod. Mason glanced up and smirked. "You made it, thought you'd flake again." I didn't rise to it, just dropped the pie on the counter and busied myself with unwrapping it. Clara gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You look cozy." That's rich coming from someone whose entire outfit costs more than my monthly rent. Dinner was set for 6, but it took an hour before everyone finally sat down. My uncle had brought his new girlfriend, a woman named Cheryl with a laugh like a dying hyena, and my cousin Jenny was live-streaming the turkey carving like she was hosting her own Food Network show. I found a seat at the corner of the table next to the drafty window and across from Mason. My mom had made little name cards. Mine said Evan Yellow Heart in gold Sharpie. Dad led grace like always, his voice cracking halfway through. Then the eating began. Halfway through my second helping of stuffing, Mason dropped it. "Hey Evan, you still working that contract gig?" I looked up, fork paused in midair. "Yeah," I said, "still doing some back-end stuff for a couple small businesses." Clara sipped her wine. "That sounds flexible." Mason chuckled. "Flexible's one word for it. Bet you get a lot of free time when no one needs you." I felt the sting, but I didn't flinch. "It pays the bills," I said quietly. Mom jumped in, bless her. "And Evan's always so good with computers. You know, we couldn't figure out how to get the printer to stop spitting out blank pages, and he..." Mason cut her off. "You know, you should really consider something stable. Maybe Clara can put you in touch with someone at her firm. They're always hearing admin support." Clara nodded politely, clearly not thrilled at the idea. I clenched my jaw. "Thanks, but I'm good." There was a pause, a long one. Then Mason laughed and shook his head. "I'm just saying, man, at some point you gotta grow up. Can't keep riding the 'I'm figuring it out' wave forever." Everyone got quiet. Even Cheryl. After dinner, I escaped to the porch with a beer. The sky had turned dark, streetlights flickering to life. I leaned against the railing, listening to the faint hum of the neighbor's leaf blower still going for some reason. The sliding door creaked open. Mason stepped out, arms folded. "Look," he said, "didn't mean to be a dick back there." "Could have fooled me," I muttered. He sighed. I don't get it. You're smart. You were always the one who got straight A's. And now you're what? House-sitting for cash and driving that tin can." I took a sip, eyes on the yard. "You don't have to get it." He stood next to me, too close. "You know Mom and Dad worry about you, right? You don't think they talk to me about it?" That part stung more than it should have. "I don't need a lecture, Mason." He raised his hands. Fine, but for what it's worth, I think you're wasting your potential. He headed back inside before I could respond. I was supposed to leave after dessert. I had work in the morning, well, a Zoom call at least, but something kept me rooted. Maybe it was the way Mom had packed a whole leftover container just for me, or how Dad slipped me a gas card just in case. Or how, even after all these years, Mason still thought I owed him some explanation for how I'd turned out. As I was zipping up my jacket, keys in hand, Mason caught me at the door. "Hey, random question," he said, casual-like. "You still got that beater Civic?" I nodded. "Think I could borrow it just for a couple weeks? Clara's car is in the shop and we can't both drive the Tesla." I blinked. "You want to borrow my tin can?" He gave a sheepish grin. "Didn't mean it like that. It's just Clara's been commuting more and I figured you're mostly home anyway." I almost said no. I almost said, "Buy your wife a rental like everyone else in your tax bracket," but I didn't. I held out the key. "It's not shiny," I said, "but it still runs." He took it. "Thanks, man." Then he left without another word. Later that night, walking into my cold apartment, something hit me. That car was the last thing I owned that made me feel independent. It might have been dented and dull and borderline embarrassing, but it was mine. And now it was. Not for a while at least. And maybe that was the beginning of everything that came next. It was 6:13 the next morning when I realized what I'd done. The silence in my apartment felt thicker than usual, like the walls themselves were watching. No traffic outside, no engine buzz, just the refrigerator's faint hum and the hollow sound of my own breathing. I grabbed my jacket before remembering I had no car. I stood by the window with a mug of instant coffee, watching the world go on without me. Across the street, someone in scrubs was loading kids into a silver minivan. A neighbor walked his dog in mismatched socks. Normal stuff. Stuff I used to be part of in a way. Now I was the guy behind the glass. The absence of the car was louder than I expected. I'd always told myself it was just a car, just a beat-up Civic that stalled in second gear and made my mechanic sigh whenever he saw it. But now that it was gone, I felt unmoored, not stranded exactly, just untethered. I checked my phone, a new text from Mason. "Car's good, tank was low though, lol." No thanks, no emoji, just lol. I took the bus for the first time in years. Had to download a whole new transit app just to figure out which one got me to Brenda's place, my only real client at the moment. She ran a second-hand furniture store and paid me under the table to manage her POS system and occasionally fix her printer when it refused to speak to her laptop. The bus smelled like old rain and someone's forgotten lunch. I sat near the back, knees pressed to the seat in front of me, trying not to make eye contact with anyone. Every pothole felt like a personal attack. Brenda was waiting out front when I arrived. "You walked?" she asked, incredulous. "Bus," I said, "my car's on loan." She gave me a look that landed somewhere between curiosity and pity. "Mason." I didn't answer. "Well, come in, the receipt printer's throwing a tantrum." I spent most of the day in the back office, elbows deep in tangled cables and broken plastic trays. Brenda brought me lunch, leftover lasagna in a Tupperware that smelled way better than it looked, and made a half joke about how I should just move into her guest room if I kept showing up so early. I laughed, but the idea didn't sound as crazy as it should have. By the time I got home, it was dark again. My legs ached from the walk from the last bus stop, almost a mile because the route changed after 6. I microwaved a burrito, ate it half frozen, and opened the group chat my mom insisted on keeping alive. Mason had posted a photo. Clara posing next to the Civic, duck lips and a peace sign. The caption read, "It's ugly, but it works," face with tears of joy. 30 likes, even Dad responded with a thumbs up. I didn't reply. The next week passed in slow motion. I took the bus everywhere, Brenda's, grocery store, the bank. I even skipped a client meeting because the route changed last minute and I couldn't get there in time. They found someone else, said it wasn't personal. Mason texted again on Friday. "Need the car a bit longer, cool." I stared at the screen. My thumbs hovered. "Sure," I wrote back. But it wasn't cool. Sunday afternoon, I was on the porch of my building when I saw it. The Civic, my Civic, parked 2 blocks down, bumper cockeyed, rear fender scraped like it had been in a low-speed battle. I walked over fast. The windshield had a bright orange parking citation under the wiper, and inside the car burger wrappers, an empty Starbucks cup, and a pink cardigan I'd never seen before. I texted Mason. Saw the car on Lincoln, looks like someone sideswiped it. Read no reply. 5 hours later I got a message. Yeah, sorry, Clara's friend borrowed it. She kinda scraped a pole, getting it buffed next week. No apology, no ask, just a declaration. I called him. He didn't answer. That night I dreamed I was driving, only the steering wheel came off in my hands. I was shouting, but no one heard me. The road ahead disappeared like the floor of an old elevator. When I woke up, I made a decision. Monday, I took the day off. Well, technically, I just didn't show up to Brenda's. I left her a voicemail that I'd be in later. That was half true. I took a rideshare to Mason's house, a tall beige suburban box with a fancy mailbox and one of those fake rocks hiding the spare key. I knew the code, same one we used for the Nintendo parental lock when we were kids. Mason always reused numbers. I let myself in. No one was home. I found the key to the Civic hanging from a little ceramic hook in the kitchen shaped like a wine bottle. I took it. I left a note. Borrowed my car back, hope that's cool. The engine still made that chirping noise when I turned the key, but it roared to life like it had been waiting for me. The alignment was off. The seat was too far forward, and someone had replaced my air freshener with something that smelled like vanilla frosting and regret. I drove. Nowhere special, just out of the neighborhood, past the gas station, past the lake we used to visit as kids. I pulled into a deserted parking lot and sat there, breathing in the silence. It was mine again. Bent and bruised, but mine. He called that night. Didn't yell, didn't even sound mad, just surprised. You couldn't have waited, he asked. I waited, I said, longer than I should have. There was a pause. Clara's voice in the background muffled. Then Mason said, "You're so damn sensitive, man." I almost laughed. I'm not the one who got offended by a borrowed Civic. He hung up. 2 days later, I got a Venmo request. $320, rear bumper repaint. I stared at it for a while. Then I declined. The next time Mom texted, I didn't answer right away. I didn't want to get into it. I knew how it would go. She'd say Mason meant well, that he was just stressed, that I should be the bigger person. But I'd been the bigger person so long, I felt hollow inside. That key, the one I thought was worthless. It had finally opened something. And not just the car. Something else. Something I didn't know how to close again. The Civic sat in the parking lot like a bruised soldier. Its rear bumper had a matte finish now, someone's rushed attempt at covering up the damage with touch-up paint. The dent was still there, like a scar half-healed but never explained. I'd started parking it behind Brenda's shop instead of outside my apartment. Less chance Mason would come sniffing around again, not that he had tried. After I declined his Venmo request, he went silent. 2 weeks passed. Then Mom invited me to Clara's birthday brunch. You don't have to stay long, she said, her voice half-whisper like she was tiptoeing through a minefield. Just show your face, it'd mean a lot to your brother. Right, because Mason's feelings were a charity I should keep funding. Still, I said I'd think about it, which in family terms was a soft yes. Clara's brunch was held at one of those minimalist spots with white tile walls, hanging plants, and avocado toast for $13 a slice. I arrived late on purpose, hoping to slip in without fanfare. Mason saw me first. He looked tired. His button-down was wrinkled, his smile was the kind you wear for social appearances, not sentiment. He gave me a nod from across the room, not quite a wave. Clara was glowing, of course. She always glowed. She wore a cream dress and a headband that looked like it cost more than my laptop. She thanked me for coming like I was her Uber Eats driver. Then she leaned in, tone just loud enough to sting. Sorry again about the car, we tried to clean it. Hope it's not like gross now. I wanted to say it had never been clean, that it smelled like gym socks before she made it smell like discount frosting, that it was mine and I liked it that way. But I just nodded. After cake, Mason cornered me near the espresso machine. He didn't waste time. You seriously didn't want to split the bumper cost? I blinked. You seriously thought I would? His jaw clenched. It wasn't even Clara, it was her friend Sadie. She offered to pay, but you ghosted. Sadie doesn't owe me, I said. You do. His laugh was tight. You're being petty. I gave you something I needed, I said. You gave it back worse. You gave me a beater with a dent already in the door. That door worked. Silence. Then he said something I didn't expect. I was just trying to include you, man. In what? A live-action demo of how little you think of me. He exhaled slowly, like I was the exhausting one. Forget it. I turned to leave. Then he added, you're so stuck in your own failure you don't even see when someone throws you a rope. That stopped me. I turned back. You think I'm a failure? He didn't answer, but the pause said enough. I left before coffee. I drove the Civic home with one hand on the wheel, the other drumming my thigh in rhythm with the engine rattle. The silence inside the cabin felt more honest than anything Mason had said all day. I kept thinking about that word, failure. Funny how people only use it when they think you're beneath them. No one ever calls a rich guy who's unhappy a failure. No one says it to someone chasing dreams that just haven't landed yet. But if you're broke, renting, driving a beat-up car, suddenly you're not living up to your potential. I parked outside my apartment and just sat there, engine off, rain beginning to speckle the windshield. Then I opened my phone and scrolled back months to the bookmarked link I always avoided. Certificate in Data Security Remote Learning, self-paced, industry approved. I'd saved it after talking to a client who said they'd pay double for someone with the cert. I'd kept putting it off. Too busy, too broke, too tired. Too afraid. The next morning I enrolled. $189 a month. I had just enough in savings to float 2 months, maybe 3. I told Brenda I'd be scaling back. She offered more hours instead. I politely declined. I didn't want to be the guy who just patched printers for life. She hugged me and called me brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt stupid. But also, for the first time in a while, I felt awake. 3 weeks into the program, I was working through a network encryption module when my phone buzzed. It was Dad. Which was weird. He rarely called unless something broke. Hey, I answered. Hey, bud, you got a minute? Yeah, everything okay. Long pause. Then, Mason been in an accident. My throat closed. What? He's okay, mostly just shaken. He was rear-ended on the freeway, car's a mess. Clara's driving him to urgent care now, but he asked for you. I swallowed hard. Why me? Guess he thought you'd understand. I drove to the urgent care in silence, windows cracked slightly to let the December chill in. I didn't listen to music, didn't rehearse anything, just kept my hands steady at 10 and 2. Clara was in the waiting room, packing in boots too clean for real concern. She spotted me and rushed over. They're still checking him out. He's fine, mild whiplash, but he keeps asking for you. Why? She shrugged. Maybe he hit his head. I didn't laugh. I found the nurse. She pointed me toward a small exam room. Mason sat on the table, neck brace askew, phone in his lap. When he saw me, his face crumpled for half a second. Then he wiped it. I'm fine, he said. No big deal. I leaned against the wall. You asked for me. He nodded. Yeah. Be it. I thought I was gonna die for a second, not even from the crash, just the noise, the airbags. It was loud. I stayed quiet. He pecked at the paper sheet beneath him. I realized something when the car stopped spinning. I wasn't thinking about Clara or work or the Tesla. I was thinking about you. I raised an eyebrow. Romantic. He smirked. Shut up. Be it. I thought about how I treated you all these years. I didn't say anything. It's not about the car, he said. It never was. You're not a failure, Evan. I just didn't want to admit I was scared. Scared? He looked up. You didn't follow the script, school, job, house, family. You let that go, and part of me resented that because I can't. He sniffed, embarrassed. I didn't know how to be your brother without comparing. I sat down. The paper crinkled beneath me. Do you want an apology? He asked. I thought about it. No, I said. I want you to stop needing to win. He nodded slowly. I can try. We didn't hug. That's not how we work. But when I left the clinic, Mason said something I hadn't heard from him in a long time. Thanks for coming. And I said, of course. Because despite everything, he was still my brother. That night I sat in the Civic again. No music, no destination. Just the hum of the heater and the streetlights flicking overhead. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like judgment. It felt like space. Like possibility. It was 2 months after the accident when I noticed the first shift. Not with Mason, though weirdly we were texting now. Real texts, not just sarcastic quips or obligatory holiday stuff. He sent me a meme about data security that actually made me laugh out loud. Then a week later, he asked for help figuring out two-factor authentication on his new work app. But the real change was internal. I was waking up earlier, not out of anxiety or obligation, but purpose. I'd made it halfway through the certification course and I wasn't just passing, I was doing well. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even Brenda. It was mine for now. Something just for me. One night in the glow of my laptop, I pulled up a blank document and titled it, Resume Evan Carter 2025. It felt surreal. The last time I'd updated a resume, TikTok didn't exist. But now I had something to put on it. Halfway through writing it, I paused. Because something strange was happening, I didn't feel embarrassed. Not about my gap years, not about the odd jobs or the freelance gigs, not even about the Civic parked outside. Every single detour I'd taken was still part of the road. And for once, I wasn't apologizing for the map. A week later, Brenda offered me a raise. I know you're cutting back, she said, biting into a muffin behind the register, but if you stay on just 2 extra days, I'll bump you to $25 an hour. Can't find anyone else who can keep this damn inventory system from gaslighting me. I laughed, but I said no. Actually, I said, I'm applying to a junior security analyst role. Her eyes widened, seriously. I nodded. She leaned over the counter and hugged me tight. About time. Meanwhile, Mason kept surprising me. He started checking in more often, not in a forced, mom told me to kind of way, but in a real human way. Once he sent me a photo of Clara trying to cook chili and burning the bottom of the pot. Your Civic might have smelled better than this, he wrote. It was oddly disarming, like we were slowly peeling back years of sibling static. Then came the moment I didn't expect. March 1st. A Saturday. Mason texted. Hey, Clara and I are having people over. Game night, you should come. I stared at it for a long time. He never invited me to one of his grown-up gatherings before. The last time we hung out without it being Thanksgiving, someone still had a Blockbuster card. I replied, Sure, what should I bring? He wrote back, Yourself, maybe Cards Against Humanity if you still have it. I did. I dusted it off that night. The box was scuffed, edges taped from where it split, but inside the cards were still sharp, still inappropriate, still funny. Still mine. Their house smelled like cinnamon candles and wealth. I arrived 5 minutes late on purpose, just enough to make a quiet entrance. Mason opened the door himself. He was wearing jeans. Not pressed slacks, not loafers. Jeans. Hey, he said, stepping aside, glad you came. Inside, it was a mix of Clara's friends and a couple of Mason's coworkers. I hovered near the drinks table at first, sipping something that tasted like fancy cider and imposter syndrome. Then Clara approached. Evan, she said, and for once there wasn't any fake sparkle in her tone. Mason told me you're doing some kind of cyber thing. Cybersecurity, I said, yeah, almost done with the cert. That's awesome, she said. Seriously, I know we gave you crap before, but I think it's cool. It's more than I could do. She paused. And sorry about the Civic, and Sadie, she's a menace. I smiled, I noticed. Clara laughed, then she gestured toward the living room. You playing or what? We played 3 rounds, I won 2. Mason tried to challenge one ruling, but everyone else voted in my favor. The group teased him about being a sore loser. He took it in stride. And when we were alone in the kitchen later, he clinked his beer bottle against my glass. You're good at this, he said. What snarky card games? No, he said, people. I used to think you avoided everyone because you couldn't handle the real world. I waited. But maybe you just weren't trying to fit into the wrong world in the first place. That stuck with me. Maybe it always will. Because for years I'd measured my worth by someone else's ruler, Mason's, society, some internal tape I never even knew I was using. But now I had my own scale. And it was finally starting to balance. April brought interviews. I bombed the first one, sweated through the second. Then came the third. A small cybersecurity firm looking for someone hungry, humble, and hands-on. I was all three. They offered me a part-time contract with full-time potential, remote, flexible, $34 an hour. I accepted on the spot. I didn't tell anyone right away. Instead, I took the Civic for a long drive. No destination, just pavement and air. I turned up the radio, opened the windows. And somewhere between the city limits and a gas station I hadn't visited since college, I pulled over and just sat in the driver's seat, watching the sun drop behind a bank of clouds. Then I opened the glove compartment. Inside, an old receipt, a cracked CD case, and a spare key I'd forgotten about. I held it between my fingers. Smooth, familiar. The same kind Mason had once said wasn't worth anything. Now, it meant everything. The next weekend, we all had dinner at Mom and Dad's again. Not Thanksgiving this time, just a regular Sunday meal. Mason brought pie. Clara brought her friend Sadie, who avoided eye contact and mumbled a half apology. I accepted it with a smile. We sat around the table, the same seats as always. And this time, when Mason made a joke about how the Civic survived more than one apocalypse, I laughed with him instead of at myself. Because I wasn't the punchline anymore. I was the one who showed up. Even when no one thought I would. Even when the key felt too heavy. Even when the car was worthless. Mason showed up at my apartment one rainy Tuesday afternoon in June. No text, no call, just a knock on the door and the shape of him blurred through the peephole. When I opened the door, he stood there holding something that made my throat catch. It was the key. The Civic spare, still on the cracked leather loop I hadn't used in years. I found it in my jacket pocket, he said, like that somehow explained everything. I nodded. You drove all the way here to give me that. He shrugged. Maybe I wanted to see where you live. I stepped aside and let him in. My place wasn't much, 2 rooms and a kitchen that moaned every time you turned the faucet too fast, but it was clean, lived in, honest. Mason walked around like he was touring a museum. This where you work now? I nodded toward the desk in the corner, dual monitors lit up, a sticky note taped to one. Keep building, you're not done. Yep, remote hours, still contracting for now, but they're talking permanent. He grinned. Look at you. Still a failure. He winced. I was a dick. Yeah, you were. He dropped onto the couch and exhaled deeply, like he'd been holding it for years. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever miss it? He asked. The track, I mean stability, a mortgage, scheduled promotions, knowing your next 3 vacations in advance. I sat down across from him. Sometimes, I said, but then I think about who I was when I tried to force myself into that life. And I didn't like that guy. We talked for an hour. Not just about work or cars or family, real stuff. Regrets, pressure, the weird gap between who we thought we'd be and who we actually became. He told me Clara had started therapy, that he was considering it too. I told him I'd started setting alarms again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Small things. But they felt big. At one point, Mason looked around again and said, you know, I used to think you were just hiding from the world, but now I see it's more like you were building your own version of it. That landed. Later that week, I got a call from HR. They were offering me a full-time role. Benefits, paid time off, retirement match. Same flexibility, same projects, but with stability. I said yes. Then I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the Civic parked below. Still there, still ugly. Still mine. A few days later, I took it to a local body shop. The guy looked it over and said, she's got character. I told him to keep the dent. Just fix the bumper. Sure thing, he said, you don't want it perfect. Nope, I said, I just want it honest. It's funny. That car used to feel like an anchor. Now it feels like a badge. A story. A symbol of what I survived and what I let go. I don't need to defend it anymore, or myself. Because I know who I am now. I'm the guy who kept going when everyone else thought he'd stalled. I'm the guy who turned a worthless thing into the start of something real. And I'm not done yet. Last Thanksgiving I showed up early. Mason greeted me at the door with a beer in one hand and a grin on his face. No car jokes this year, he promised. Shame, I said, walking past him. I had a great comeback ready. Everyone laughed. Even Clara. Even me. And when Mom brought out the pie and Dad started in on the football stats no one cared about, I realized something. This version of the table, where I wasn't the punchline or the project, it was worth waiting for. After dinner, Mason and I stood on the porch again. Like we had a year before. Only this time the air was warmer. Quieter. He nudged me, you still got the Civic. I smiled, still runs. Wanna trade keys? I blinked, what, you giving me the Tesla? He laughed, hell no, I meant symbolically. He pulled out a fresh copy of the Civic's key, the one he'd kept, the one he'd returned. We swapped.